The child who did not fear fire. The mountains were not meant for humans. That was what the old stories said. Not the stories told to frighten children into obedience, but the older ones. The ones spoken quietly beside dying fires when the night grew too still and the wind sounded too much like a distant roar. The mountains were a scar upon the world, jagged, broken, and ancient beyond memory. Their peaks clawed at the sky as though trying to tear it open, their sides blackened by fire that never truly faded. Even when snow fell, it melted in strange patches, hissing softly as it touched hidden heat beneath the stone. Nothing lived there. Nothing that humans understood. And yet something watched. Always. The villages far below had long ago learned their place. Fields were kept at a distance from the foothills. Roads curved wide, bending away from the shadow of the peaks. No one climbed beyond the tree line, not for hunting, not for wood, not even for curiosity. Because those who did not come back. Or worse, they did. Burned, broken, silent. There were names carved into old stone markers at the edge of every village. Names of those who had thought themselves brave. Or foolish. Or desperate. The reasons didn't matter. The outcome never changed. Because above the clouds, within caverns carved by fire and time, lived creatures that remembered. Creatures older than kingdoms. Older than human history itself. Dragons. They were not beasts. That was the first mistake humans ever made. Beasts could be hunted. Beasts could be understood. Dragons were neither. They thought. They judged. They remembered. And above all else, they did not forgive. No one alive remembered when the war had begun. Only that it had. A king perhaps greedy for power. A mage foolish enough to believe he could bind what should never be bound. Or maybe it had been simpler than that. A hunter. A nest. A single moment of fear. A single act of violence. And then, fire. Endless, merciless fire. Cities had burned. Armies had vanished. The sky itself had seemed to fall as wings darkened the sun and flames rained upon the land. In the end, humanity had survived. But not by victory. By surrender. By retreat. By learning to stay away. And so an unspoken rule had taken root across generations. Humans did not go to the mountains. And dragons did not come down. As long as that rule remained unbroken. There was peace. A fragile, silent peace. But peace does not protect the lost. The forest at the mountain's edge was not like other forests. The trees grew taller here, their trunks thick and twisted, bark darkened as if touched by old smoke. Their branches tangled overhead, weaving a canopy so dense that sunlight filtered through only in thin, fractured beams. The air felt different. Heavier. Still, even the wind seemed hesitant to move too loudly through those woods. And the deeper one walked, the quieter it became. No birds. No insects. No distant sounds of life. Only the faint whisper of lives. And the steady beat of one small heart. Leo stumbled. His foot caught on a root hidden beneath fallen leaves, and he fell hard onto his hands, the impact sending a sharp sting through his palms. For a moment, he didn't move. He just stayed there, kneeling on the cold ground, his small shoulders rising and falling with each uneven breath. Then slowly, he pushed himself upright. His hands were dirty now. Scraped. His knees hurt. Everything hurt. But he didn't cry. Not yet. He pressed his lips together, swallowing the tight ache in his throat as he looked around. The forest looked the same as it had an hour ago. And the hour before that. Endless. Unfamiliar. Wrong. I just came from there, he whispered, turning in a slow circle. But every direction looked the same. Every path led nowhere. Or worse, somewhere deeper. His chest tightened. He hugged his arms around himself, trying to keep the cold out. But the cold wasn't just in the air. It was inside him now. Creeping. Growing. What if his voice faltered? He couldn't finish the thought. Because if he did, if he said it out loud, it might become real. He had been with the others. That much he remembered. A caravan moving slowly along the forest road. Merchants, travelers, guards, people who talked and laughed and argued about things he didn't understand. His mother had held his hand. Tight. Always tight. Don't wander, she had said. Stay where I can see you. And he had. Until he hadn't. It had only taken a moment. A distraction. A sound in the trees. A curiosity too strong to ignore. And then, he had stepped away. Just for a second. Just far enough that the voices faded. And when he turned back, they were gone. Hello, Leo called again. His voice sounded too small. Too weak. It disappeared into the trees without echo. No answer came. No footsteps. No familiar voice calling his name. Only silence. And the wind. His vision blurred. He blinked hard, forcing the tears back. Don't cry, he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. Don't cry, Mama said. But his mother wasn't here. And the forest didn't care. A sound broke the silence. Soft, faint, but unmistakable. A rustle. Leo froze. Every muscle in his small body went still. The sound came again. From the trees to his right. Not the wind. Something else. Something moving. His heart began to pound. Slow, heavy, loud enough that he was certain whatever was out there could hear it. Hello, he tried. His voice barely carried. The rustling stopped. For a moment there was nothing. Then, it came again. Closer. Leo took a step back. Then another. His heel caught on uneven ground and he stumbled, barely managing to stay upright. He should run. Every story he had ever been told screamed at him to run. But his legs refused. Rooted in place by fear and something else. Something stronger. Curiosity. The trees shifted. Branches parted. And something stepped into the clearing. It was small. That was the first thing Leo noticed. Not large like the monsters in stories. Not towering or terrifying. Just small. But wrong. Wrong in a way he couldn't explain. Its body was sleek, covered in scales that caught the fatting light in dull shades of gray and silver. Its limbs were long and slightly awkward, as if it hadn't quite grown into them yet. Wings folded tightly against its back. Wings. Leo's breath caught. They were real. Not feathers. Not fur. Membranes stretched between thin, delicate bones, trembling slightly with each movement. Its tail dragged behind it, leaving a faint line in the dirt. And its eyes. They glowed. Softly, like embers fatting in a dying fire. The creature staggered. One of its front legs buckled, and it let out a small, broken sound, half hiss, half whimper, as it caught itself before collapsing. Leo didn't move. Couldn't move. Because now he understood. Not just with his eyes, but with that deep, instinctive part of him that knew stories. That knew dangers. That, he whispered. The word stuck in his throat. Oh, dragons. The hatchling froze. Its head snapped up, eyes locking onto him. Bright, alert, afraid. For a moment, neither of them moved. Two children. Two creatures who should have been enemies. Standing in a silent clearing as the last light of day faded around them. Then the hatchling hissed. Not loudly, not aggressively, but sharply enough to break the moment. It stumbled backward, wings spreading slightly as if to make itself look larger, more dangerous than it truly was. But it wasn't convincing. Not with the way its injured leg dragged. Not with the tremble in its movements. Not with the fear in its eyes. It wasn't a predator. It was prey. I won't hurt you, Leo said. His voice was small. Gentle. The kind of voice used to calm frightened animals. The hatchling didn't understand the words. But it understood something else. Tone. Intent. It hesitated. Head tilting slightly. Watching him. Leo took a careful step forward. The hatchling reacted instantly, hissing again, sharper this time, its wings flaring wider. Leo stopped. Immediately. Okay, he said quickly, raising his hands. Okay, I won't come closer. Silence returned. Heavy, tense, but different now. Less fear, more uncertainty. Leo looked at it again. Really looked this time. And that was when he saw it. The injuries. Scratches along its scales. A tear in its wing. And its leg. Its leg was wrong. Bent at an unnatural angle. The scales there were cracked, darkened. Burned. Or broken. He didn't know which. But he knew one thing. It hurt. You're hurt, he whispered. The hatchling shifted. As if the word itself had weight. It tried to stand straighter. Failed. And collapsed back down with a soft, pained sound. Something in Leo's chest tightened. A feeling he didn't have a word for. Not fear. Not anymore. Something else. Something warmer. Something that made him take a small step forward. Then stop himself again. Because he remembered. Dragon. Danger. Fire. Death. All the stories. All the warnings. But the stories didn't match what he saw. This wasn't a monster. This wasn't the creature that burned cities and destroyed armies. This was a child, just like him, lost, hurt, alone, and suddenly, he wasn't afraid anymore. The fire that chose not to burn. Night in the mountains was not like night anywhere else. It did not fall gently. It descended. Heavy, absolute, alive. Darkness poured between the trees like ink, swallowing the last traces of light until the forest became something else entirely, something deeper, older, and far less forgiving. The cold followed. Sharp, relentless. It crept through the ground, through the air, through cloth and skin, settling into bone with a quiet, merciless patience. And within that darkness, two small figures lay side by side, unaware of the world that watched them. Leo slept. Not peacefully. Not deeply. His body shivered despite the faint warmth pressed against him, his thin cloak doing little to protect him from the cold earth beneath. His hands were curled close to his chest, fingers stiff, his breath shallow and uneven. He dreamed of home. Of firelight dancing on wooden walls. Of his mother's voice, soft, steady, safe. Of warmth. But even in his dreams, the cold crept in. And the silence. And the feeling of being alone. Beside him, the hatchling did not sleep. Not fully. Dragons did not surrender to unconsciousness the way humans did. Even at rest, their senses lingered, their awareness stretching outward into the world around them. It felt everything. The shift of air. The distant tremor of movement beneath the earth. The subtle changes in scent carried on the wind. And the humans. It felt him most of all. Warm. Fragile. Strange. The hatchling shifted slightly, careful not to disturb the small body beside it. Its injured leg throbbed. A deep, pulsing ache that refused to fade. Each heartbeat sent a flicker of pain through its limb, a reminder of the fall, the sharp rocks, the sudden drop, the panic as its wings failed to carry it. It had been alone since then. Separated from the others. From the nest. From safety. Instinct told it what that meant. Alone meant vulnerables. Vulnerable meant deaths. Its kind did not survive by being weak. And yet, it was. For now, the hatchling lifted its head slightly, its glowing eyes scanning the darkness. It could feel them. Far above. Not see. Not hear. But feel. A distant presence. Ancient. Powerful. Watching. Its kin. A low, instinctive sound rumbled softly in its chest, a call it did not fully understand but one it needed to make. A signal. A plea. I am here. I am alive. I am alone. The sound did not travel far. Not in the way human voices did. It sank into the air, into the earth, into something deeper, something older than language. And far above the mountains, Something herded. High within the jagged peaks, where the air burned with heat rising from deep volcanic veins, a massive shape stirred. Stone cracked beneath shifting weight. Ash drifted from the ceiling of a cavern carved not by time, but by fire. Eyes opened. Ancient eyes. Eyes that had watched civilizations rise and fall. Eyes that remembered. The call reached them. Faint, weak, but unmistakable. The hatchling lived. A low growl echoed through the cavern, deep enough to shake dust from the stone. Another answered. Then another, until the mountain itself seemed to breathe. They had lost one. Days ago. The bond had faded suddenly, cut, fractured, distant. A fall, a separation, a silence that should have meant death. But now it called. Weak, but alive. That should have been enough. It should have been simple. Find, retrieve, return. But there was something else. Something wrong. Something unfamiliar. Something that did not belong. Ascend. The ancient dragon rose slowly, its immense wings unfolding with a sound like tearing stone. Its nostrils flared, drawing in the air, searching, understanding. And then, it froze. Humans. The word was not spoken. It did not need to be. It existed in memory, in instinct, in scars that had never truly healed. A rumble spread through the cavern. Not curiosity, not confusion, but anger. Old, deep, unforgiving. Humans did not belong here. Humans were not allowed here. Humans did not come this far unless they were hunters. Killers, destroyers. And now, one stood beside their young. The ground trembled. Wings spread. And fire stirred in ancient throats. Below, unaware of the storm gathering above him, Leo shivered. The hatchling felt it first. A shift, a pressure in the air, a change in the world that went beyond sound or scent. Its head lifted sharply, glowing eyes narrowing as it looked toward the sky, though the thick canopy hid everything above. It knew, not with thought, but with instinct. They were coming. Relief surged through it. Strong, immediate, overwhelming. Its kind would find it. Protected. Take it home. But the feeling did not last. Because the human was still there. Curled beside it. Breathing softly. Alive. The hatchling lowered its head, looking at him. At the strange, fragile creature that had done what no human should have done. It had not attacked. It had not fled. It had not screamed. It had given food. Shared warmth. Stayed. The hatchling did not understand. Humans were enemies. That was truth. That was memory. That was instinct. And yet, this one was not. Its tail flicked once, uncertain. Its wings shifted, tightening slightly around the sleeping child. Closer. Protective. Without knowing why. Above, the sky darkened. Clouds gathered. Not by chance. Not by weather. But by presence. Massive shapes cut through the air, their wings beating with slow, powerful strokes that sent ripples through the wind. Silent. Controlled. Deadly. There were 3 of them. The first was the largest. Its scales were black, not dull but deep, reflective like polished obsidian. Faint lines of red glowed between them, pulsing like veins of molten stone. Its wings stretched wide, vast enough to blot out the moon when they passed before it. Its eyes burned. Not with light, but with something colder. Something older. The second followed close behind. Larger than any human structure. Its scales pale, almost silver, catching what little light remained in the sky. Its gaze sharp. Calculating. The third, smaller, but faster. Its wings cut through the air with precision, its body sleek, built for speed rather than power. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their awareness overlapped, connected, shared. The call guided them, pulled them down. The forest trembled. Branches shook as wind rushed downward. Leaves tore free, spiraling through the air. Animals, those few that dared exist this close to the mountains, fled in blind panic. And in the clearings, the hatchling stood. It pushed itself upright, ignoring the pain in its leg. Its wings spread slightly, its body low, alert, waiting. Leo stirred. The sudden rush of wind broke through his fragile sleep, pulling him from dreams into something colder, harsher, real. His eyes opened slowly, blinking, confused. At first, he didn't understand. Then he heard it. A sound, deep, heavy, rhythmic, like thunder. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, his heart already beginning to race. "What?" he whispered. The hatchling let out a low, urgent sound. "Not fear. Not exactly. Something else." "Warning." Leo turned and looked up. The trays above them moved. Not gently, not with the wind, but violently, as if something enormous forced its way through the sky itself. And then he saw them. Wings, massive, endless, terrifying. A shape descended through the canopy, branches snapping, leaves scattering as something far too large for the forest forced its way down into the clearing. The ground shook as it landed. Leo couldn't breathe. It was impossible. The dragon stood before him. Not small, not weak, not hurt, but vast. Its head alone was larger than his entire body. Its wings stretched wide, casting shadows that swallowed the clearing whole. Its scales shimmered dark and red, like living fire trapped beneath stone. And its eyes burned with something that was not just intelligence, but judgment, ancient, unyielding, and it was looking directly at him. Leo's body froze. His mind went blank. Every story, every warnings, every whispered fear, all of it crashed into him at once. Dragon, death, run, but he couldn't, because the hatchling, the small injured dragon, had moved. It stepped in front of him, small, fragile, defiant, and spread its wings, shielding him. The great dragon stilled. The clearing fell silent, and for the first time in centuries, a dragon hesitated, because between it and the human it had every reason to destroy stood one of its own, the flame that learned mercy. The forest did not breathe. It held itself still, as if the world itself understood that something impossible was unfolding in that small, broken clearing beneath the mountain. Wind had ceased. Leaves hung motionless in the air where they had been torn free. Even the cold seemed to hesitate, because in the center of that silence, two truths stood facing each other. Ancient hatred and something new. The great dragon did not move. Its massive form loomed over the clearing, a living mountain of scale and fire. The faint glow beneath its blackened armor pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat made of molten stone. Its eyes were fixed, not on the hatchling, but on the humans. Leo could not breathe. He could not think. He could barely exist beneath the weight of that gaze. It felt like being seen completely. Every thought, every fear, every weakness laid bare before something that could end him with less effort than breathing. His body trembled. His instincts screamed at him to run, to hide, to do anything but remain where he was. But he couldn't move, because the small dragon in front of him did not move either. The hatchling stood firm. Its injured leg trembled beneath its weight. Its wings, torn and uneven, stretched wide in a fragile barrier. It was not enough. It could never be enough. And yet, it did not step aside. A low rumble rolled through the chest of the great dragon. The sound was not loud, but it carried, deep, vibrating through the ground, through the trees, through the bones of every living thing nearby. A warning, A question. A command. The hatchling answered. Not with words, but with a sound of its own. High, unsteady, but unyielding. The message was simple. Even Leo could feel it. Mind. The clearing seemed to tighten around that single moment. Because the meaning behind it was not small. It was not simple. It was defiance. The second dragon descended more quietly. Its pale silver form slipped through the broken canopy, landing with a grace that belied its immense size. Its eyes flicked between the hatchling and the human, calculating, measuring. Understanding. The third remained above. Circling. Watching. The great dragon's gaze did not waver. Its nostrils flared slightly, drawing in the scent of the human. Smoke. Fear. Hunger. Cold. And something else. Something unexpected. No blood. No steel. No fire. No threat. And yet, humans. Memory surged. Not thought. Not reasons. But something deeper. Something older. Fire. Cities burning beneath a darkened sky. The sound of screaming carried on the wind. The sharp sting of steel biting into scale. The unnatural pull of magic, chains that burned, bindings that cut deeper than any blade. Humans standing beneath them. Not small, not weak, but cruel, clever, dangerous. That was truth. That was history. That was what humans were. And yet, this one stood there. Small, fragile, terrified, and had not runs. The dragon's head lowered. Slowly, deliberately, Leo's breath caught. It moved closer. Each step heavy enough to shake the earth. Each movement controlled, precise, absolute. The hatchling shifted, letting out another warning sound. But it did not retreat. The great dragon stopped. Just a few steps away. Close enough that Leo could feel the heat radiating from its body. Close enough that he could see the fine details of its scales, the way they overlapped like armor, the faint cracks that glowed with internal fire. Close enough that he could see its eyes clearly. They were not just burning. They were watching, judging. Leo's hands trembled at his sides. His heart pounded so loudly he was certain it could be heard. He knew what came next. He didn't need to be told. Every story ended the same way. The dragon would burn him. It would be quick, or maybe not, but it would be final. He should run. He should scream. He should do something. But instead, he did the only thing he could. He stayed. The dragon lowered its head further. Closer, closer, until its massive snout hovered just above him. Heat washed over him. Dry, intense, breath that smelled of ash and fire. Its eyes narrowed slightly. And in that moment, time stopped. The world narrowed to a single point. A single decision. The dragon opened its jaws. Leo flinched. His eyes squeezed shut. His body braced for pain. For fire. For the end. But it did not come. Seconds passed. Long, heavy, impossible seconds. And still, nothing. Slowly, hesitantly, Leo opened his eyes. The dragon had not moved. Its jaws were open. But no flame came. Only breaths. Warm, steady, alive. It was waiting. Watching. The realization came slowly. Confusing. Impossible. It wasn't attacking. It was deciding. Leo swallowed. His throat dry. His voice small. He began. But the words wouldn't come. What could he say? What could he possibly say to something like this? The hatchling made a soft sound behind him. Not a warning. Not fear. Encouragement. Leo hesitated. Then, slowly, very slowly, he moved. His hand lifted. Shaking. Unsteady. The dragon's eyes sharpened instantly. Its entire body tensed. One wrong move, and it would end. But Leo did not reach for a weapon. He had none. He did not reach to strike. He did not even know how. He simply reached forward and placed his hand against the dragon's snout. The world stopped. The contact was brief. Light, barely there. But it was enough. The dragon froze. Because no human had ever done that. Not like this. Not without fear. Not without anger. Not without intent to harm. But this was none of those things. This was trust. Leo's hand trembled against the warm, smooth scales. "They're going to help you," he whispered softly, his voice barely audible. "You're not alone anymore." He wasn't speaking to the great dragon. He was speaking to the hatchling. But the words carried, and the meaning behind them. Even more so. The great dragon inhaled slowly, deeply, and something changed. Not in its power, not in its presence, but in its understanding. The human had not come to harm, had not come to take, had not come to destroy. It had come by accident, stayed by choice, and given when it had nothing. The dragon's jaws closed. No fire came. The forest breathed again. The tension broke. The second dragon stepped forward, its pale form lowering slightly as it studied the human more closely. Its gaze was sharper, more precise, and yet not hostile. The third descended from above, landing lightly at the edge of the clearing. Watching, waiting, the great dragon straightened slowly, its wings folding back against its body. Its gaze shifted to the hatchling. The small dragon let out a soft sound. Relief. Recognition. It stepped forward. Carefully, despite the pain in its leg. The great dragon lowered its head again. This time, not in judgment, but in acknowledgement. It nudged the hatchling gently. A touch so careful, so controlled, it seemed impossible for something so large. Then, its gaze returned to the human. Leo stood still, unmoving, waiting. The dragon studied him for a long moment. And then, it made its decision. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped back. Space, distance, permission. It was not acceptance. Not fully, but it was not rejection. The hatchling turned back toward Leo. Its glowing eyes softer now. Brighter. It moved closer. Pressed its head gently against his side. Leo smiled faintly. Despite everything. Despite the fear. Despite the impossible situation he found himself in. "You're going home," he whispered. The hatchling made a quiet sound. Not agreement. Not refusal. Something else. Something that felt like a promise. High above, the sky began to clear. Clouds drifted apart. Moonlight spilled down through the broken canopy, casting silver light across the clearing. The great dragon spread its wings. Massive, powerful, unstoppable. The others followed. The hatchling hesitated. It looked at Leo. For a moment, it did not move. Then, slowly, it turned and walked toward its kind. The great dragon lowered itself slightly, allowing the small one to climb onto its back. Carefully, protectively, and then, it rose. Wings bait once, twice, and the forest trembled as the dragons lifted into the sky. Leo stood alone in the clearing, watching until they disappeared beyond the mountains. The silence returned, but it was different now. Not empty, changed. Leo wrapped his arms around himself. The cold returned quickly. The fear, the uncertainty. But something else remained. Warmth, not of fire, but of something far rarer and far more dangerous. Hope. The dragons did not forget. They never did. And this would not be forgotten. Because for the first time in centuries, a human had stood before them, and the fire had chosen not to burn.